Hey guys, welcome back to Any Narrates. Today's story's title goes like this. Brother sits my soon-to-be wife down and explains how she's marrying a lost cause because my business wasn't doing well, so she leaves me at the altar last minute for me on the day of the wedding, but things change completely now and wants me to fund their wedding. Hi, so a couple of months ago, my brother, 28 male, talked to my fiancé, Beth, 28 female, out of marrying me. Beth and I, 30 male, had been together for 2 years, but my brother had never shown any interest in her, so I suspected nothing amiss. I asked her to marry me last year, and I found out later that at our engagement party, my brother had taken Beth aside and told her that she was going to get married to a quote-unquote lost cause, and she'd better off with him instead. She still stayed with me for a couple of months and left on the morning of the wedding. She abandoned me at the altar, and that's the time she chose to tell me that she thought about everything several times and she felt like my brother would be a better match for her than me. Apparently, the two of them had grown close during the time between the engagement and the wedding, and she was now choosing him over me. It was all very public, and I still haven't been able to live it down. She even told me the reason that she was leaving and brought up how my business wasn't doing well, which is also what my brother had told her, and explained the lost cause comment. The two of them walked away from the wedding venue together and left me standing there, all confused and lost at the altar, until my dad seated me and explained what was going on, because I was completely dumbstruck. My dad handled everything after that while I drank myself to sleep for the next couple of days. Everybody in my family cut my brother off after that, and none of us heard from him either. My friends did tell me that he had moved out of the city and was working in a law firm in Brooklyn now, but that's all we knew about him. For context, regarding my business, I used to work in sales and I recently started a new venture of my own. It had been in the works for quite a few years, and I thought that last year was finally the time that I made the leap. Because everything was falling into place anywhere, and the timing just felt right. I had a list of investors and a couple of my buddies were also willing to join me. So I quit my job and started working on my own business. I had discussed everything with Beth before I did it, and it wasn't like she wasn't aware of my plans. She was even supportive of it, until my brother stuck his big fat nose into our personal lives. Of course, any business takes time to break even, but I had savings to fall back on until we were profitable, and my brother's statement about my business not doing well was not true. He was just trying to scare Beth into leaving me, and he succeeded. I wouldn't say that that was entirely his fault, because if Beth had any faith in me, then she wouldn't have left me. So maybe deep down, she wanted to leave and my brother's interference just gave her an excuse. I was very upset that she'd been cheating on me and was having an emotional affair with my brother while I was planning our wedding and was looking forward to a future with her. It took me a while, but I decided to throw myself into my work because that was the only thing that I had going on for me. Thankfully, it all worked out because we're profitable now and are actually doing quite well. Fast forward to now, I recently received a message from my brother about 3 days ago where he said that he wanted to meet me to quote-unquote make amends. He also mentioned that he and Beth weren't married yet and felt like they couldn't go ahead without a wedding unless they had my blessing. He said that he felt terrible for breaking us apart, but he really did love Beth and had loved her along ever since the day that I brought her home to introduce her to my family, which is why he couldn't take it when we got engaged. He ended his text by saying that he was ready to stay unmarried for the rest of his life, but he wasn't going to get married to Beth without his big brother's blessing. Forgive me for being insensitive or blunt right now, but that entire message felt like a load of baloney. He was so full of it and I could see right through him, because he'd been this way ever since we were kids. I hate to say this about my own brother, but after what he did, he kinda deserves this. He is one of the most cunning, sly, and manipulative people I know. And that's where he screwed up, because he tried to manipulate a person who already knew these things about him. He should have known that I wasn't falling for any of it, especially not the whole sad little brother act that he was putting on. So I ignored that first text, even though I was really eager to reply to it and call him out on his bluff. But I decided to be the bigger person, mostly for my own peace of mind, and let it go the first time. It didn't end there, and a couple of hours after that first message, I received another one, and this was apparently from both my brother and Beth. They said that they knew that they'd screwed up and were sorry for it, but they loved each other and they just wanted me to accept it. Because otherwise, I'd just make them feel guilty for the rest of their lives, and they didn't feel like it was fair for me to punish them just for being in love with each other. And then they started telling me how difficult life had been going for them after they moved to Brooklyn. They lived in a very small apartment because that's all that they could afford with the sky-high rent in New York. Beth was struggling to be a housewife because that's not what she was used to so far since she'd been a working woman. But here, she couldn't do that because somebody needed to stay at home and do all the cooking and household work, and my brother didn't know how to do any of it. They said that life had been difficult, but they were still trying to make the best of it. Until last month. Apparently, there had been massive layoffs in the firm that my brother used to work in, and he'd been let go of as well. They had some money set aside, but they couldn't live off of that forever, and they were in really big trouble right now. Apparently, Beth's parents had also cut her off after she walked out of our wedding because it'd been a shameful incident for their family. And now when she reached out to them, they demanded that she get married to my brother in the proper way, and they'd consider helping them out financially and taking her back. So now they needed money to get married the right way, which involved coming back home and having a proper wedding. But to be able to afford that, they needed money, and they didn't want to dip into their savings for this. So they were reaching out to me because my parents had very clearly declined to help them out. Beth's parents would only help her out with money after she got married properly, which she needed money for. It was a paradox. Anyhow, as ridiculous as that sounds, the two of them were now asking me to fund their wedding. I could barely even believe my eyes when I read that text, because I felt like this had to be a huge joke and they were definitely pranking me. In no universe could anyone in their right mind actually expect me to fund their wedding, especially after what happened just a couple of months back. They might be over, but I wasn't. And the more I thought about that text, the more I felt that they were being entitled and just insane in general. I was furious, and even though I tried my best to keep my temper under control, my anger got the better of me, and I made a post. I took screenshots of the text and uploaded them on my social media accounts with a really long caption, completely humiliating them and making fun of them for texting me for help after everything that they'd put me through. I said a lot of things about them, most of which were true. But the one thing that I regret is that I said it on a public platform. That's actually pretty much the only thing that got me a lot of backlash from my family. They said that everybody was embarrassed enough as it is. I didn't need to add more by publicizing this and reminding everybody of what had happened by putting up those screenshots. My dad said that I needed to take those down, and I did so. But my brother had already seen that I had posted those screenshots, and of course, he was miffed. He sent me another text saying that he knew that they messed up, and he actually was apologizing for it. But it wasn't his fault that he was in love with Beth, and she fell in love with him too. So I needed to let that go and stop being such a crybaby about it. He also said that the post was completely uncalled for, and if I didn't want to help them out, then I could have just said so, instead of making such a big deal out of it. Especially when I was not even agreeing to help them. I feel kind of bad about what I did, but I don't know how to go forward, and I definitely do not want to apologize. I don't think my brother and Beth have earned that, because I don't feel like I did anything that bad, but everyone's reactions make me feel like I did. Am I the a-hole for posting my brother's text asking me for help on my social media after he ran away with my wife-to-be? So I decided not to do anything about it, and I'm not even going to feel guilty about what I did. I think I dealt with everything pretty maturely for the first couple of months and didn't air dirty laundry in public out of respect for my family and their reputation. But now it's on my brother, not me. He reached out to me. He said something stupid and I lost my temper at him. You can't blame me for that. You gotta blame the idiot who poked me and made me finally snap. And it takes a pretty patient man to keep his mouth shut, even when his brother turns his fiancé against him and runs away with her while he gets left at the altar. And I was that man. I was patient and grown up for a long time until I just couldn't be that person anymore. I am a human being and I have real human emotions, and just sometimes I'm allowed to let my emotions get the better of me. So if anybody has a problem with that, they can just deal with it I don't care. I told my dad that I was not going to apologize to anyone because I believed that he did expect me to issue a public apology for what I did. Since this reflected badly on my parents, but too bad. I'm just not doing it. My dad wasn't cool with what I said and insisted that I apologize on behalf of the family. Because he didn't want to become the laughingstock of his other relatives, we had an argument where I accused him of putting way too much pressure on me. And that bit was kind of true because even apart from this peculiar incident, my dad always insisted that I never show any emotions because it was apparently embarrassing for him. He even forced me to stop crying on the day of my wedding, after Beth walked out with my brother and told me to pull it together because I was embarrassing myself and also him. Even as kids, my brother and I were just never allowed to cry or fight out loud or just scream at each other to get it out of our systems. We were just always supposed to be on our best behavior, even when we were at home and were never allowed to freely express our emotions. And I gotta say, I feel like that really messed with us. Of course, that's no excuse for how my brother behaved. It has nothing to do with that. But for my father to expect that I issue a public apology for posting about my brother's idiotic expectations of me, after what he did to get back at him, is kind of ridiculous. And he needs to know that what our family or other people think of us is not always the most important thing in life. Sometimes, you just have to do things to get it out of your system and be done with it, without caring about what somebody else might say or think. And if my dad believes that it's more important for him what his relatives or friends might think about our family rather than me and how I feel, then well, I have nothing to say to that. I am, and always will be, grateful for my father because he raised us on his own since my mother passed away from cancer a couple of years after my brother was born. But that still didn't give him the right to force us to suppress all of our emotions. And about my brother, I haven't heard from him since that text where he called me a crybaby for reacting to the situation like how any other normal, sane person would react. I think it's a good thing because if he has anything more to say, then I might just track him down and punch him in the face, and he would totally deserve it. I don't know why he believed that it was appropriate to ask me for money, because as far as I'm concerned, he is the reason that my wedding got called off and my fiancé left me at the altar. They must have some real audacity to come up to me and think that I'm going to agree to help them out. I haven't spoken to Beth's parents since the wedding, but I'm pretty glad that they're giving her such a hard time. She definitely needs to learn a lesson about how you treat people who love you. They're her parents, they can't leave her side, which is a pity, because they really should. So from what I've heard, Beth and my brother are back in town now. I guess they dip into their savings to come back home. A friend of mine told me about it a few days ago, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to try and get back in touch with my family soon enough. I cleared the air with my dad a couple of days after the post and explained to him essentially everything that I said in my first update. You can go back to it to check out what we talked about. But yeah, we're back on good terms now. He understood where I was coming from and said that he was apologetic for putting so much pressure on us in terms of repressing our emotions, and he didn't even know that he was doing that, so it was pretty eye-opening for him. We worked things out and we're better now. So I told him that my brother was backing down and he might try to reach out to him soon enough, so he needs to be prepared for that. My dad might have wanted me to remove that post, but it had nothing to do with my brother or his feelings, and he just wanted me to take it down because he didn't think that it was a good look for the family. But if I'm being honest, my dad was probably more upset with my brother than I was when the wedding got called off. Like I said earlier, my dad was a single father, and he always felt like he needed to prove to the world that he was just as capable at being a good father as he was at his work. And when my brother pulled off what he did, he told me that he felt like he had failed to raise us well, somewhere along the line. Had my mother been around, we probably wouldn't be facing so much shame and embarrassment from the rest of the family. It was sad for me to hear him speak that way because in my opinion, this had nothing to do with the way that we were raised, and it was just my brother being a selfish jerk. I believe that even if we had the best parents on earth, my brother would still have turned out the way that he did, because that's what he is at his core, a garbage human being. My point is that my father blamed himself for what happened at the wedding for a really long time, but eventually he realized that this was not his fault, and now he probably hates my brother even more than I hate him. I would advise my brother to stay out of his way, but I want to see what happens when he goes knocking on my father's door, asking him for money. It finally happened, guys. It happened yesterday. My brother showed up at my father's place with Beth. I had been waiting for this to happen for almost a week now and had been psyching myself up because I knew that my dad would annihilate him. I knew that it was a stupid thing to be excited about, but honestly, this was long overdue because after he left, nobody said anything to him, and it felt like he just got off scot-free. But now that he's back, there are going to be consequences for whatever he did and whatever it is that he's about to do. And he's already had to face my father, and I've heard about it all right from my dad, which was like music to my ears, honestly. So, apparently my brother showed up at my dad's place with a bouquet, and he and Beth fell to their knees to ask him to forgive them and were crying crocodile tears as soon as he opened the door. He demanded that they stand up straight so he could look them in the eye when he spoke to them, and so they did. And after that, my father told him that they had made a huge mistake by coming here, and he had half a mind to record them crying on their knees and post it online, just like I had, so the world could know how pathetic they are. He also said that he was very well aware of what they needed, and what they needed was money. They weren't actually sorry for anything that they did, and if they actually had regretted anything, then they would have apologized a long time back, and not just now because they were in need of help. He told my brother to never come back here or bother me again, because he was a self-centered narcissistic douchebag and didn't deserve any sympathy. Everything that was happening to him right now was just him facing the consequences of what he did earlier, and the way he'd hurt and humiliated me in front of everybody. My brother even tried to argue and said that being in love was not something that he planned and he didn't regret it, as if that was the point. If he really was in love with Beth, then he should have told her earlier, instead of waiting until we were engaged and then breaking us up. It would still hurt, but at least it wouldn't be humiliating. Of course, this was her fault as well, because she chose to wait until the morning of the wedding to come to her senses. But she was not my brother, and I didn't grow up with her, so honestly, her betrayal stung less than my brother's. Anyway, my father totally let them have it and sent them away crying, which I'm really happy about. They deserve all of this. Hey everybody, so my brother is really upset, and of course he's blaming me for how my dad reacted to his return. He texted me last night and told me that he knew that I had something to do with the way that he spoke to him, and said that I had no right to turn people against him, especially when he was already going through so much. First of all, I didn't turn anybody against him. My dad did whatever he wanted to do. I didn't tell him to say those things, and he said it of his own accord. Those were his real feelings about my brother, and if he couldn't deal with it, then tough. And also, he has no right to complain about turning people against him, because that is exactly what he did to me. He turned Beth against me and then made a run for it with her on the day of our wedding. So this is just him getting a taste of his own very bitter medicine. It's ridiculous of him to say that I am the one turning people against him, because I think his actions did that for him. He hasn't been in touch with anyone from the family ever since he left, so he can't just come back and expect everybody to welcome him with open arms. Especially after what he did, which was pretty messed up. But I wanted to mess with him a little bit, so I texted him back saying that I had talked to our father, and yes, I had turned him against them. But there was nothing that he could do about it, except cry about it. So now, he was the crybaby. I guess that text really got on his nerves, because after that, he sent me a voice message, him just swearing at me and using expletives that I had never even heard before. So I learned a lot from that voice message, but it was really disgusting, so I blocked him after playing it. That was last night, and this morning, I found out from my father that he didn't need the money anymore and had quote-unquote arranged it for himself. He told us that they had to sell a lot of their own belongings, including the ring that my brother had purchased for Beth, but he was okay with it because he knew that he couldn't count on his family, since we were just going to let him down. I know he meant to make us feel bad about it, but we didn't have a lot of sympathy to spare for someone like him. I am just hoping that now he finally realizes that we don't care and leaves us alone. So my brother and Beth are finally getting married in a week, and it's funny because I expected to feel something, anything, when I heard the news from a couple of my friends, but I didn't. I guess they finally managed to convince her parents to help, and now they're having a grand wedding, which is whatever. None of our mutual friends are attending because they want me to know that they stand with me, And that's really sweet of them. Not even people who were exclusively her friends are willing to attend, because apparently she hadn't been in touch with them after my canceled wedding a few months ago, and they don't think of her as a friend anymore. I didn't get this information straight from them, but there has been a lot of gossip going around, and I pick up on things. Honestly, I moved on from that episode, and I genuinely just wish for the best. I know the best is not going to happen to them, because they are horrible people, but I'm not like them. So I'm still gonna wish it and hope this wedding doesn't end with one of them walking away once again. Alright guys, that was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Go ahead and smash the like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, we'll be seeing you in the next one.